Although we're only one race into this year's Formula One season, Alfa Romeo team principal Frédéric Vasseur is already making some fairly large assertions about his team's hopes and aspirations for this year. He believes that they can achieve regular points finishes and fight in the lower midfield throughout the season. Alfa have struggled towards the back of the pack ever since their full return to the sport as a constructor in 2018, so why do they now believe that they can regularly compete for points? Let's find out. Vasseur stated following the Bahrain Grand Prix that the team raced with authority, leaving the Alpines and an Aston Martin behind. Even though we leave Bahrain with no points, we do so having regained our place in the midst of the midfield, and results will surely come soon. But is this really true? While both Alfa Romeos had very strong races at Bahrain, with Raikkonen and Giovinazzi placing 11th and 12th respectively, we were only one race into the 2021 season. So how can the Alfa Romeo team claim to be part of the midfield after just one race, having been racing towards the back of the pack for the last 3 seasons? Following a fairly uneventful and disappointing 2020 season, Alfa Romeo's pace was relatively and somewhat surprisingly strong straight out of the gate in 2021, with Kimi Raikkonen posting the 4th fastest overall time on day 3 of pre-season testing, ahead of favourites such as Lewis Hamilton as well as Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas, while also topping the mileage charts for that day. This continued a string of good testing form for the Swiss-Italian team, with both their consistency and component durability being particularly strong points as they managed to complete 422 total laps, equalling AlphaTauri's highest number of laps over the 3 days. Antonio Giovinazzi also had a strong testing weekend, placing 6th on day 1 of testing and 5th on day 2. But is testing truly representative of the team's true pace? Can we really gain an accurate representation of the Alfa's speed from just 3 days of testing? While it is certainly true that the car's reliability, especially with the underperforming Ferrari engine, which was very susceptible to reliability issues and component wear last year, was remarkable. It is therefore worth asking whether the lack of reliability issues and therefore high mileage at Bahrain during testing allowed the car to be adapted more specifically to the track, and as such, whether it gave the Alfas an advantage for the race. With this being said, however, both drivers' strong performances as well as a positive overall team performance during testing marked a decent step forward from the 2020 testing weekend where Alfa suffered reliability difficulties, with Kimi Raikkonen struggling with technical issues on day 2 of 2020 testing, while the on-track performance and mileage of both Antonio Giovinazzi and reserve driver Robert Kubica on day 3 in 2020 was disappointing, with both drivers placing towards the back of the timesheet. While this may be perceived as evidence that Alfa Romeo have made progress following last year, testing figures usually cannot represent the true pace of a team, as shown by the fact that in 2020, Raikkonen topped day 2 of testing, but went on to only score 4 points during the entire 2020 season, 50% of the team's 8 total points. However, Kimi Raikkonen said following the Bahrain Grand Prix that the car was behaving nicely and that it had felt good as it did in testing, while also suggesting that he would have been in with a chance of getting points given a few more laps as he slowly reeled in Lance Stroll towards the end of the race. Statements like these suggest the confidence of both the drivers and the team in the car and reaffirm their belief that they can genuinely fight in the midfield. Perhaps the most reliable point of comparison for Alfa Romeo's true raw pace can be achieved by looking at the difference between their average gap to pole position in 2020 compared to 2021. During the 2020 season, Alfa Romeo sat an average of 2.875% behind pole position, giving them the worst qualifying record out of every team over the course of the season. At Bahrain this year, however, the data suggests that they were only 1.923% behind during qualifying, marking a 0.952 total quali performance gain, the most out of any team on the grid. This shows that the team have made significant performance gains in relation to their competitors, and suggests that they could have the potential to fight with midfield teams such as Aston Martin, who lost a total of 0.555% of their performance this year compared to last year, and Alpine, who only managed to gain 0.039%. Alfa's significant performance improvements will have closed the gap to these teams fairly significantly, and could potentially tee them up to engage in a season-long fight among the midfield, provided they can maintain the rate of development of other teams throughout the season. Alfa's recent success at Bahrain, and its hopes for success in following years, rest largely on the quality of the improving Ferrari power unit. Following a dismal 2020 after an engine regulation clarification made both the team themselves and their customer teams in Alfa Romeo and Haas lose much of their performance, they look to have made improvements, with Ferrari's solid points haul at Bahrain evidencing this. By staying with Ferrari and also sticking with their driver lineup, Alfa have the advantage of stability as well as an improved engine on their side, as they are now aware of the fundamental characteristics of the engine and the driving styles of both drivers, something which will have allowed them to adapt their car to fit both of these factors. Alfa have also made aerodynamic progress this year, with a particularly distinctive aero feature of this year's car being the front wing. The sharp tapering down of the outboard flaps has the purpose of reducing downforce from the outer part of the wing in favour of increasing outwash of air around the front tyres. This gives the front end of the car more downforce and therefore makes it more stable through the corners. Alongside other minor aerodynamic improvements, the car, as it is largely an evolution of the 2020 Alfa Romeo, should therefore be much easier to drive, allowing both drivers to be more consistent and confident. This confidence in the car will in turn open up the increased possibility of overtaking moves and therefore points finishes for the team, potentially allowing them to compete with lower midfield teams for the final points playing positions on a regular basis. What do you think? Are Alfa a genuine threat to the midfield this year? Are they finally becoming a competitive team? Or is this just pure showmanship from the team to intimidate their rivals? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Like the video and subscribe.